Hi, how's it going? Welcome to Framelines. This is Josh. Today's video is all about night photography. I love taking photographs at night, but I do like to kind of divide my night photography into two sections, I guess. Night street photography, so pictures of people in the city at night, and a more intentional, going out with a tripod, slow shutter speed kind of night photography. So this video is primarily going to be about that, some technical tips and tricks, also some different filters and equipment that I like to use. But I'd also like to look at some books that cover both night photography and night street photography. And then I also recently found this book called Night and Low Light Photography, a complete guide. My granddad gave me this about 15, 16 years ago when I was doing an A-level in photography. This book came out in the mid-80s and it does primarily just apply to film photography. However, the theories and the tips can all be applied to digital photography, and it seems to cover absolutely everything. There's actually a section here about photographing amphibians at night, so maybe I'll try that one day, not in this video though. So if you're really into photography and you like going out to take pictures regularly, as the winter months roll in, it's going to get dark around 4 or 5 o'clock, so you really have no choice but to get used to taking pictures in lower light situations. And when I think about street photography at night, I often think about Sleepless in Soho by Joshua Jackson. This is a really beautiful book published by Setanta Books, and they're all sold out now, but I thought I'd just have a little flick through so you can see just how Josh builds this portrait of Soho at night using artificial light, the way he captures his subjects. This is a really lovely example of night street photography, and it's a really beautiful book this. I recommend you check it out if you can. However, when we think about more intentional night photography, maybe photographs without people, I think we sometimes think of the photographs of Todd Hido, and I've got this book here, Intimate Distance. This is a really stunning book, and you can see these pictures that are taken at night of houses and trees, and it becomes much more about the composition and the mood. I think it becomes a real challenge to build an interesting photograph, and you can tell just how long Todd Hido spent driving around, finding interesting locations to photograph, working on different compositions. I really have these themes and moods in mind when I go out with my tripod taking photographs at night. Another great book to look at for night street photography is London Nights, published by Hoxton Mini Press. This contains photographs of London at night over many decades. It's a really great combination of more like night street photography and more still, more intentional scenes. I love that it combines these two ideas. So yeah, I really recommend picking this up if you want to look at London specifically at night. It has little sections of people's projects on various different topics, and also more slower, more still, more atmospheric scenes as well. It's a really beautiful book, this. And I also wanted to talk about Some Kind of Heavenly Fire by Maria Lax, published by Setanta Books. It's a selection of photographs taken around her hometown, focusing around the locals who have reported supernatural occurrences over the years. A lot of the photographs are taken at night. There's some really beautiful wider scenes. Again, her use of colour and the way she composes these wide scenes at night, and her use of lighting as well. Some really beautiful examples, and this is a great place to get inspiration for going out and taking photographs at night as well. So I hadn't really taken any intentional night photographs since my photography A-level, like 15, 16 years ago. Then when the UK was in lockdown last winter, I have this kind of constant burning desire to go out and take photographs, but I couldn't really at the time. And I thought, it's getting dark at 4 or 5 p.m. Why don't I just grab my tripod and try and get back into night photography? And it was really fun doing it over that period, and now it's winter again. I've started doing it again. So I thought I would talk about some of the kind of tips and tricks that I like to do when I'm actually going out taking night photographs. So I've heard lots of people say that they love taking photographs on film because it lets them slow down and be more intentional. And I think you can have that same experience by taking digital photographs at night with a tripod. You have to be so deliberate setting up the tripod, thinking about your exposure, For me, it's a very slow process doing digital night photography, and you really kind of get that same sense you do when taking photographs on film. You have to be very deliberate, you have to be very slow, you have to be very conscious about composition and what you're doing. So that's one of the main reasons I really love doing this intentional night photography. It's also taught me a lot about composition. Maybe when you don't have people in the frame, you have lots of time to try different compositions, maybe move around, try different angles. Especially when you have a tripod, you can easily lower the camera, you can flip out the screen, and maybe, yeah, you can try all sorts of different compositions. So that's also something I really love about night photography. There is also a huge amount of scope to experiment with different filters, for example. On a few shots here, I tried using a 1/4 Pro Mist filter. I think it probably is a bit over the top. I had in my head it would kind of emulate that like cine still look, I guess, but when you use cine still you get this red glow which you don't really get with a Pro Mist. So on the technical side for digital photography at night, I like to try and use a camera with a full frame sensor if I can. I find that gives me the most dynamic range, the most flexibility when editing the RAW files. I try and use a very lightweight tripod just simply because you're carrying it around with you. In terms of the settings on the camera, I will set the ISO to probably around 400, try and keep it nice and low. I find that 400 gives you better dynamic range from editing the RAW files, but I guess it changes per camera. I like to set the aperture to f8 and then leave the shutter speed on auto, so it just works out the shutter speed itself. It doesn't really matter how slow the shutter speed gets if it's on a tripod. However, I do actually like to bring the exposure compensation down a couple of notches. And I know that may be seen a bit counterintuitive, like underexposing at night. What are you doing? Well, my reasoning behind this is, with digital RAW files, the first place that you're going to lose information is in the highlights. The highlights blow out very easily, yet you retain a lot of shadow detail. There's lots of information in the shadows that you can recover. So the reason I underexpose slightly is just to stop the camera sensor from getting confused by artificial lampposts, etc., and overexposing and then blowing out the highlights. And I found this has worked really well for me. So in terms of what you need to take night photographs, I thought I would refer to this night and low light photography book because there's a great list in the opening paragraph of the book. With this photograph here, it says, some of the essential equipment for night photography in use: a good tripod, a cable release, a capacious bag, and warm clothing and gloves. However, in the place of a cable release, what I do on my camera when taking night photographs is just set the self timer. That way I can just press the shutter button, leave it, and then it will take a picture when it's nice and steady. So that has thankfully kind of replaced the cable release, I guess. So those are my thoughts on night photography and night street photography. I also wanted to quickly mention Framelines magazine. Please do check it out from the link in the description. Shane and I are so proud of it. We really hope you like it and we're loving seeing them all arriving. We've also made an Instagram for the magazine called @FramelinesMag, where people can submit their street photographs. Thank you for watching along. Really hope you enjoyed it. Any questions about night photography, please let me know in the comments. See you next time.